Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. But today, my friends, today is a special day. This isn't any normal video. Today we're talking about quite possibly the biggest update in the history of Overwatch. Up there with the hero limit update. We have, folks, role queue and role lock in the game. Now, for right now, it's only on the PTR, of course, as things always are when they first roll them out. But on September 1st, they will be fully rolling out role queue and role lock. But we'll talk more about that September 1st date in a little bit. Let's jump into it. There's obviously some stuff going on as well involving role lock. The Overwatch League, I'm going to save that for Monday when I give you all of my thoughts and picks and whatnot for the beginning of Stage 4. We'll talk about that. Today, I just want to focus on the PTR patch, so role queue and role lock, and the hero changes and general balance changes that were made. So, role queue, what is it? There is a link in the description to a dev update where Jeff Kaplan explains it. It's a long one. It's about 16 minutes, so if you want a more in-depth look into it, other than what I'm going to be talking about, you can see it there. You can also go to a link in the description for an article from the Overwatch website and news briefing, I guess, more so than an article. But I don't know if you can hear the person upstairs, but they are very, very loud. Anyway, what is role queue? How does it work? The basics of it. The basics of it is that you have the three roles: tank, damage, and support. And when you go into either quick play or competitive, you will have the option to queue as any of those roles. You can choose just to queue as damage or tank or support. You can choose to queue as support and tank. You can choose to queue as all three of them, whatever you want to do. And you will be put into a match where there is an opening in any of the roles that you have selected. So if you're only queuing as support, you will be put into a game where there is an opening for support. If you're queuing as tank or support, you'll be put into the one that has the first opening that is in your skill level. This is a very nice thing to do because it doesn't get rid of flex players, people who fill what is needed. Now you'll be able to fill just by checking off all three, and then you'll be put into where you need to be put into. This is better, though, for two reasons. One, it will give you separate SR for each role. So now, if you are someone who's a very, very good support player, for example, but you want to improve as a DPS player, going into comp and playing as a DPS player on your account that has high SR, but your support main, it's going to impact your SR. So now, you can have a separate SR just for damage. You can play damage as you would normally play damage, but now you'll be with people who are closer to your skill level, so you can improve at the game in the best way possible in an environment that will help you be able to learn because you're with players who aren't significantly better than you. For just an example, for me, my support SR is over double my damage SR. I'm not a good damage player. I'm not super experienced with PC gaming. Overwatch is really the first competitive, actually it is the first competitive PC game that I've ever played on a regular basis. I don't have a history playing first-person shooters in general. I especially don't have a history playing first-person shooters on a PC. So this for me is still, even after 2 years, I'm not that good at it. Mainly because I've just chosen not to play it that much. I choose to play support or tank, where my mechanical skills and aiming is not as important. Now, though, because I was kind of bad at damage heroes, it would, in a way, bring down my overall MMR and SR as a result. Now they're completely separate. I can play support in the higher SR that I have and, perform with people who are more in my skill level, and I can then improve more because I'm not playing support at a really low SR where I'm just kind of going like, this seems like I'm really kind of making things a little less difficult. Things seem to be pretty easy right now. These other players are pretty bad. Oh, it's because of my MMR. Yeah, it's really bad. Now, I can play the way that I want to play. I can play with players at a closer skill level, You know, my tank SR is very close to my support SR. It's about 100 less. Whereas, like I said, my damage is about half my support SR. So this is nice. It's a very good thing. The other reason why it's good is because they have done a way, or they've made a way so that the roles that will likely be played more, or the roles that are getting the least amount of play, are incentivized. And they do that by putting in loot boxes or credits that you get for playing those roles that are not being played the most. When this rolls out, this will probably be mostly damage heroes and players who are queuing in damage. Though it was listed as support on the PTR, but I can tell you support was not struggling in terms of queue times, because it took me 15 minutes to find a first game when I first got on and picked support, so that wasn't nice. But that's a very nice change and a good way to get people to play. But in general, I really like the role queue system and the way it works. And the SR and all that kind of stuff is great. They've limited the amount of, or they've lessened the amount of placement matches you have to do now in each season. So it's based on now pure role. So you need 5 placement matches for each role. So that's 15 total if you do all 3. If you do all 3, you get more competitive points as a result. You get competitive points for each role that you have completed placement matches for, so you can get more for playing. It's lessened now, so if you just do 1, you'll get fewer competitive points. So there's really no reason to not do all 3. It's 5 matches more than you would have done normally, but now I found it less frustrating to do. It took me longer to do, but I found it less frustrating because I knew that I was getting into a good match. I knew I wasn't going to be waiting for 20 minutes potentially to get into a game where I was solo healing for 5 DPS. I knew, like, yes, I'm going to play support, but I know I'm going to have 2 DPS players. I know I'm going to have 2 tank. I know I'm going to have another support with me. It just works really well, and it makes the game work the way it should work. You have tanks, and you have supports, you have damage dealers. It's just so nice. It's just so nice. As I mentioned before, that September 1st date would be coming back. The September 1st date is very important to the way everything goes. The role queue will be actually having a beta on the live servers from August 13th to September 1st. It'll be a beta competitive season that runs from August 13th to September 1st, and that is to obviously test the way things have gone with role queue from the PTR, now to move it into the live servers and test it there. Because you can only do so much testing on the PTR. Now you can test it on console as well as the live servers for PC. So that's a big thing that's going on from August 13th to September 1st. And then on September 1st, the full role queue will be available for quick play and competitive play. If you are someone who is not a huge fan of role queue, there is a little silver lining in that the way that it is changing is, of course, changing both quick play and competitive play. But if you prefer the way quick play is now, where you don't have the limits of queuing and you don't have the limits of 2-2-2, they will be putting quick play classic as an arcade mode, which is nice. That is the one that I'll probably end up playing the most, as long as it's available, if I want to get arcade loot boxes, because then I'm essentially playing the normal game mostly. It'll be a little bit different. The hero balancing will be a little bit different, but it'll be pretty much a normal game, but I have the freedom to play essentially what I want. And it's not something where I have to worry about going into a match and being like, I'm going to play some competitive. Oh, this isn't going to work because I'm playing support with 5 DPS. It's arcade. You get your loot boxes that you get normally, which is very nice. That is a very good mode. They don't talk about it here in the news briefing. I wish they did, but Jeff Kaplan talked about it in the dev update. That's why I recommend the dev update, because there are things that Jeff Kaplan talks about that are a little bit more understandable when he says it, but also there's just some additional information there as well. Obviously, I mentioned before that Overwatch League is doing stuff with role locking, but I don't want to talk about that right now, just because their system is slightly different than what is going to be on the live servers, so I don't want to cause any confusion. with that. This thing has been in development for over a year, roll Q and roll locking, which I think is great. I think it was definitely needed, and it was something that I think is interesting. I don't know how long this has been something that has really been called for, and some of the people have been like, we need this. But I know recently, in the past, several months now, this has been something that the community has really wanted. I didn't really think that I wanted it until probably about 2-3 months ago, when I realized this is something that needs to happen, because games are getting to a point they just aren't fun anymore. And I've been having a lot more fun playing recently with these changes. So I'm all for it. Let's move on now to the hero balance changes, though. The PTR patch notes will be linked in the description if you want to check those out. There's quite a few of them, so I'm not going to go into detail about all of them. I'm just going to tell you what they are, and for some of them, I will read you the dev comments depending on how big it is, or at least how big I perceive it to be. But first, we have some general updates. The first one is that the global ultimate cost is increased by 12%. All that means that across the board, every hero, it is now 12%, at least 12% more expensive to get an ultimate. We'll talk about the at least in a little bit. The other thing is a change to slowing effects, where now, instead of stacking together, friendly and enemy slowing effects are now separate, and movement speed will be reduced by whichever is slower. Their comments on both of these are that ultimates are coming up too often, considering how high impact they are. We are reducing how quickly they are built, so less fights will be determined by ultimate usage. The slowdowns change will mostly impact heroes which can slow themselves, such as Widowmaker while scoping or Reinhardt while holding his shield. In these cases, enemy slowdowns, such as Symmetra turrets or Maze Freeze, will not hinder these heroes unless they stop slowing themselves, or the enemy's slow value passes their own slow value. So essentially all that means is, whatever of the two slowdown effects that are clashing, whichever one of those two is slower, that one takes priority. And then if the other one becomes slower, then that also takes priority. Well, something like Maze Freeze, it'll, you have Maze Freeze, and if it's freezing Reinhardt when he has his barrier up, you'll essentially see it kind of catch up to it, and Maze Freeze will catch up to going how slow the Reinhardt holding the barrier is, and then it'll pass it, and then it'll start to slow down. That's something you've kind of seen sometimes, at least I've seen it, where you walk through something as Reinhardt and you just can't move. Like, you're just starting to get frozen, and it just can't move. And you're like, well, this is stupid. I see with Brig a lot too. You try to walk through, and then you get frozen, and you're just like, I physically can't move. What is happening? It's frustrating, so that's a change I really like, and I'm glad they made it. Ashe had a change where her reload time per round was decreased from 0.3 seconds to 0.25 seconds. Doomfist's quick melee no longer pauses ammo reload. There's not even a comment on that one. It's pretty self-explanatory. Hanzo's storm arrows ammo was reduced from 6 to 5. They said the overall damage output of storm arrows was too high, so we're reducing the maximum number of shots. Moira's fade can now be used while stunned. This, my friends, this is one of the wackiest changes I have ever seen. The comments on this one: Moira has always been good at healing and dealing damage, but she offers very little utility compared to the other healers. This change reinforces her evasive nature and allows her potentially to save her team from area stuns such as Reinhardt's Earth Shatter. What this means, friends, is that Moira can get knocked down and just fade away instantly. She can have just hit the ground and she doesn't have to get up, she just fades away. She can get stunned by Brigitte, fade away. Junkrat Trap, fade away. Frozen by Mei, just fade away. I'm out. Flashbang, fade. It's insane. It's easily one of the craziest changes I've ever seen for a hero that really didn't have a low, entry level. She's a pretty simple hero. She's one you can kind of just, learn how to play pretty quickly. Moira's the hero I have the most hours on, so I know that because I'm not a very good player, and I know pretty much how to use Moira, so it's interesting that they made this change. I don't really know why they did it, but they did, so here we are. Orisa is the next hero. Her protective barrier cooldown was increased from 8 seconds to 9 seconds. which they said a common point of feedback for playing against Orisa was that it doesn't feel useful to shoot the barrier as it comes back so quickly. Increasing the cooldown of protective barrier will make destroying it more rewarding, which is true. That's 100% a thing. Like, the advice that I've seen in so many videos where they're just like, don't even bother shooting the barrier. It's not worth it. Just try getting around it, because if you shoot it, you're never going to get through it, and you're just going to be standing there shooting at a barrier that'll never break. And I was like, well, that seems a little negative, but if that's what I got to do to succeed, then I guess that's what I'm doing. But this is a change I think is good. I think it'll make Orisa not as good, though I still think she will be the dominant tank in the current meta. But I guess we'll see what happens. Reinhardt got a new passive ability, Steadfast, which reduces knockback effects by 30%. The dev comments for this one say that as a frontline melee range tank, Reinhardt was more adversely affected by knockback abilities than most heroes. To reduce some of this frustration and enable Reinhardt to more easily fulfill his role, he is now more resistant to being knocked back. Sombra's hack duration on enemy players was reduced from 6 seconds to 5 seconds, and her EMP activation time was increased from half a second to 0.65 seconds. The dev comments on this one: hack is a potent disable with a long duration. Reducing the duration slightly will make it feel less oppressive as a hacked player without reducing its effectiveness too greatly. The increased cast time on EMP allows for more time to react and opens up more counterplay for the opposing team. Here's the thing that is interesting. Apparently Sombra as a hero has the lowest win rate of any hero, which is interesting when you look at the Overwatch League, because she's very successful in the Overwatch League, especially recently. But the Overwatch League is the Overwatch League. It's completely different than your normal game. But there's seemingly no trade-off to the fact that she got nerfed. And she's a hero that wasn't super successful anyway. So we'll see how this one changes. The other thing with this one, her EMP animation now is really weird. Because normally she would just, walk up and she would just, yell, "Avaganda las luces," and, throw her arms out. But now she, jumps up a little bit. She crosses her arms for, 0.15 seconds, and then does the whole EMP thing. So there's just this really weird time where she's just doing nothing, and then all of a sudden her arms flail out, and it's very weird. It's kind of funny to look at, and it's also ridiculous. And I hope that they make some kind of change so that she doesn't just stand there with her arms crossed for a little bit of time before then just flailing around and going like, "Apagando las luces," because that's what she does. Symmetra had some changes to her teleporter. It now lasts an infinite duration until destroyed. Players can destroy their teleporter with the ability to input, which I believe is just what you ever use to place a teleporter. So I think that's E. Default is E. The cooldown now starts when teleporter is destroyed. Her cooldown was increased from 12 seconds to 15. The maximum range is increased from 25 meters to 30 meters. The teleporter breaks if the entrance is more than 40 meters from the exit, so that applies if you put it on a moving platform on Volskaya Industries. And it'll break once it's 40 meters away. And the teleport reuse time was increased from 1 second to 1.5 seconds. The comments on this one say that Symmetra's teleporter is an interesting tool, but often felt too restricting to use. Making the teleporter last forever opens up new opportunities for how Symmetra is used in various maps and group compositions. Tracer's pulse bomb damage was increased from 300 to 350. They said pulse bomb was reduced in power some time ago to make sure it was not overly punishing the tanks, which are much easier to stick the bomb to. While this is still a goal, we're restoring some of the lost power to help deal with other hefty targets such as Bastion or enemies with a bonus armor from Brigitte. And Wrecking Ball had changes to Minefield, which were increased projectile speed from 10 to 13, which causes the mines to spread out more, which makes it makes it easier to create a wider minefield, especially from high in the air. And they reduced the activation time from 0.25 seconds to 0.1. And they said Wrecking Ball is a very active playstyle, but often it felt difficult to make good use out of his ultimate. This change allows him to spread out his minefield further if he wants, while still allowing for a tighter cluster if he activates it near the ground, which is nice. But the biggest hero changes, I skipped over this hero because I wanted to focus on this one at the end because of how big it is. It's essentially a minor rework. That is to Brigitte, which is what I'm sure a lot of people are going to hear that and they're going to go, yes, delete Brig! But they did not delete Brig. She is still in the game. Though, while talking to Seagull, Jeff Kaplan did say they're going to delete Sombra. So, folks, Seagull got them to delete Sombra. Super. You're welcome. That's Seagull's words, not mine. For Brigitte, her Inspire, her passive ability had the healing amount increased from 100 to 130 to make her a better support in only 2 support compositions, but her self-healing was now halved. So she doesn't heal herself as much, but she heals her teammates more. Repair Pack is essentially a brand new ability now. It now has 3 charges instead of 1. The healing amount was changed from 150 to 120. It heals over 2 seconds instead of instantly. And if you throw multiple packs at the same person, the current duration will be extended by 2 seconds. So you can get 6 seconds of healing onto someone if you throw all 3 of them at a single person, or you can get 2 seconds on 3 different people. I think this is very good to make her a better healer. The Inspire and Repair Pack changes will help make her more viable in a 2 support composition, because she was awful in them. She was only really good in 3 support compositions. Whip Shot's outgoing velocity was increased from 60 to 80, and the retracting time was reduced from 0.6 seconds to 0.3. I don't know why they sped up her Whip Shot, but they did, and it feels nice, and I'm a big fan of it. Her barrier health was reduced from 500 to 200. The Shield Bash stun duration was reduced from 0.9 seconds to 0.75. I believe that puts it as the same amount of time as McCree's Flashbang. And the Rally ultimate cost was increased by 10%. So that's on top of the already 12% global increase. That is why I said at least 12%. There's no dev comments on the Brigitte changes, so that's all there is to them. I wanted to just mention, though, my thoughts on these ones, because I am a player who plays a lot of Brigitte. She's one of my favorite heroes. I think she's a very fun hero to play. And I understand the frustration that existed about playing against her. She had a lot of sustainability, she was able to survive a lot, and she was able to stun you, whip shot you, and you're just like, well, I can't do anything. And then for a second, pretty much I can't move. Her survivability took a huge hit with these changes by the Inspire healing not healing her as much anymore, and her barrier health going down. I don't know if you needed to do both of those changes as extremely as they did, but they did. I think, though, when I was playing, I found her to still be someone who could survive pretty well in the fray of fighting. You just kind of have to be a little more careful. So I don't think there's any really major things that would need to be changed. Maybe increase the Inspire healing that she does to herself by a little bit, so it's not halved. Maybe it's like 40% less instead of 50% less. But that's something that will obviously can be iterated on and changed and worked on over time. Obviously, like, it used to be that she was getting 100 healing to herself. Now she's getting 65. So it's not a full, like, complete cut in half of what she was doing. She's doing 65% of what she was before, which is still pretty good. It's not awful. So with all that in mind, I think Brigitte's changes, I think they're fine. I thought she was a fun hero to play as still with these changes. I thought she worked a lot better as a support, which is what she's really supposed to be. So do I wish, she was a little bit more, beefy still? Yes, but that's just because I like to play Brigitte. But I understand the way that the game works and why she needed to be changed. And I'm all for these changes. I think they're fine. I think in general, she's going to work very well still. And I'm excited to see how she changes. But I want to know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. If you want to check out any of the things that I have looked at today, the dev update, the news article, the patch notes, whatever, they will be linked in the description as always. This video, of course, a little bit longer than usual, so if you stuck through this whole thing, you are awesome, and you are the best, and you deserve all of the love in the world. But I'm going to get out of here. Once again, thank you for watching. Consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed and want more videos like this in the future. But I am going to get out of here, so have a great day, and bye-bye!